Ashwajan from Janney Montgomery Scott LLC is a 28-year Wall Street practitioner. He's currently at Janney Montgomery Scott, as I said, a venerable investment boutique founded in 1832. His past roles in the industry include membership in Wells Fargo's Global Investment Policy Committee and head of that firm's equity focus group. He has co-authored global forums and co-chaired at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, New York, and Tel Aviv, and invited to show events in Monte Carlo, Amsterdam, and Fort Lauderdale. And he says he believes there's no investment too small or too big to get it right or to fine-tune to achieve an investor's dreams. Frequent guest on CNBC. Anytime anybody's asking about Luck's buying habits and the global economy, he's one of the talking heads that most often appear. And I remember an anecdote he delivered last time we heard him speak a few years back that I have used since, and it was a story about how he made a connection with a customer over a completely different subject other than what he does for a living, and it was over wine. They were talking about wine, and he made this wonderful connection in Monte Carlo at a wealth advisor forum, and he, as a matter of fact, is a certified maître du vin, a master of wine, and he knows his Bordeaux and Cabernets. Ladies and gentlemen, Ashwajan.
Thank you. My mother wrote that introduction, and thank you for narrating it. I was hoping for Miami Vice. I guess you see the resemblance, but I'll take that, and thank you, gentlemen at the back. Can you hear me in the flanks? Can you see me? Outstanding. Only in America, ladies and gentlemen, only in America, can you leave New York City like I did yesterday, take a taxi to the airport, fly to Fort Lauderdale, land, take a taxi to the hotel, check in, have 4 meals before I leave, speak, take a taxi back to the airport, fly back, and then take a taxi back to the office without a wallet. I lost my wallet coming into Newark. No wallet, no penny, no credit card on my person. And I said to myself, after going through security in Newark, New Jersey, how am I going to do this? But fate promises luck and provenance. I'm here, delighted to be here, and I'm thinking, why would you want to hear about money from a guy who can't handle his own? I just don't get that. But I'm going to rebuild my credibility, and I'm going to rebuild my relevance. Gentlemen, the man, if you could forward the slide, please. If there's a ticker, I'll take the ticker. Here we go. Let me establish, rebuild my credibility, as I mentioned, because of severe self-security and self-esteem crisis that I went through losing my wallet. Yes, like I was introduced, this is my 28 years getting to 30, hitting the sort of the glass ceiling on Wall Street, having been a chief investment strategist and head of private client research at 2 prominent firms, Morgan Stanley and Merrill Lynch, and now at Janney, where I run the ultra high net worth investment office. When I say prominent families, they are $25 million in investable assets, about $100 million in net worth, including 2 royal families, one Her Highness the Queen of Denmark, and the other His Highness the Crown Prince of Morocco. And these are public knowledge, so I can display the name of the clients. But my real thrill is to advise real, regular people like you and me. And the reason for that is very, very simple. It's not corny. It's just a very pragmatic reason why I enjoy advisement of real people. Because real people have real issues, real aspirations, real dreams, and real fears about the capital markets, about their children and college planning, about their own retirement, about their 401ks if you're a business people. So today, I'm in front and center, ladies and gentlemen, and there's a thrill to be the gatekeeper of small businesses with 5, 6, 8, 10, 15, 20 employees, initiating a 401k for the business for the first time and capturing as much of a tax deduction and building a nest for their employees, thus increasing morale and stickiness. So I'm right at the gateway of that. I never got to do that with the Crown Prince of Morocco. What am I going to tell him? Do your employees have a 401k? I mean, really? Yeah. I could talk about Brexit to those people. I could talk about currency influations and market economics to investment committees all around the world. In fact, I do in 40 countries and 5 continents. But the real conversations are about your fiscal landscape, your financial landscape, your retirement, your children, and your business. That being said, okay, what is my relevance? Right? What is my relevance? Well, your client, each one of yours, your client is my client. Our clients are not similar or somewhat similar. They are identical. In fact, I'm willing to speculate that a couple of my clients probably overlap with yours. So there is a relevance in me narrating the journey of my struggles and with those my triumphs and tribulations in acquiring these clients. Would that be relevant to you? If I went through the narrative one by one in those that I was exposed to, very wealthy individuals, and the sheer challenges, but also the thrills of acquiring them as clients, and the complete disappointments and frustrations of not, would that be useful to you? I need to hear a yes to carry on because I'll tell jokes. Good, excellent. All right, here's the first stereotype and myth. And by the way, if you took one nugget out of my narrative and my content today, one, not two, I've done my job. If you didn't get anything out of this, that's okay too, because then I get to be invited again, because I did that exactly last time. So we're in good shape. The rich buy with their heart and justify with their mind. They're emotional buyers. And you are in the most emotional merchandise ever possible, because you sell adventure, you sell romance, you sell finesse, you sell sophistication, you sell the very material destination of a rich person's journey in acquiring wealth, a yacht. Geez, think about the blue azure seas, the storms, the whales and the fish and the twilight and the morning stars, and all of that is captured in your product and service. You need to tell that story, and I know you do. And there are several successful people in the room nodding their heads because I know they do. But yes, the rich are like anybody else. They respond emotionally to emotional signals. It's only after the emotional signals are registered, the greed and the lust has been blossomed, it's when they make the cognitive connection with their accountants and the CPAs to justify it. So use the heart around your product and services. Use the heart around yourself, your persona, and what you represent. And then talk about the pragmatics, whether it's pricing, whether it's processes, whether it's efficiencies, whether it's differential of your product and positioning versus your competition. It's the combination of this that creates urgency, and urgency usually culminates in a sell. That's been my experience. This is 101, dealing with well-being. And you'll recognize the merits of this right away. The rich, for some reason, have an instant bond with other rich. Has anyone in the room seen and observed that or felt that? Yes. And you would think, geez, they'd be awkward with each other. You'd think they would compete with each other. You'd think that egos would get in between two very rich, successful people. Wrong. And this has been my mistake over the years, not acknowledging that and not observing that. There's an instant bond when a rich meets another rich. It's called reflective cognitive connection, because they're reflecting on their own paths to success and are seeing another person, another specimen that managed to get through and become as successful as them. And they have tremendous respect And that other person, the other very rich person, has tremendous credibility in delivering whatever that person wants to deliver. So you will see that, especially in social circles, the ultra-wealthy love to connect with the ultra-wealthy. They're in the same clubs, they're in the same yachts, they're in the same international trips together, their families, their children go to the same school, right? So the rich like to do business with the rich. That being said, I asked myself in the last 28 years, I can never be as rich as my rich clients, right? I can never be as rich as my rich clients. I don't even have a wallet, for God's sake, today. I mean, really, I can never be rich as my rich clients. But I did learn, and that's my nugget, and that's my best practice that I want to share humbly with you, is that if you exude richness in other platforms, then the cognitive, reflective perspective is in your favor. In fact, if you're rich in your knowledge, of your product, your services, if you are a category killer as a yacht broker, as a yacht leasee, as a yacht insurance person, as I met a lawyer yesterday, a very successful, prominent lawyer, who's a category killer in yacht law, in yacht business law, and he knows it. And he knows it. And his team knows it. And it exudes that pride, that confidence. And by the way, there's a thin line between professional arrogance and being obnoxious. Right? Thin line between professional arrogance and obnoxious. The rich lap up professional arrogance because they are themselves professionally arrogant. But they will not stand, nobody would, obnoxious. But how do you get to that thin line? I made many, 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 many mistakes. I made many, many mistakes. I would go over the line constantly during my younger years. It takes years of judgment to fine-tune and dial to the point where hubris meets humility, and your true credibility of your knowledge and expertise in what you do comes through to that rich person. So yes, you don't have to be wallet rich as the rich. Rich in knowledge and credibility, rich in integrity. That's a turn on, number one, for the wealthy, to meet someone that they can instantly observe the integrity. And I say this tongue in cheek, not all rich have high integrity, right? Oh boy, I really see shaking heads, right? It's an unintuitive path to be tremendously endowed with integrity and also be very rich. It's that the math doesn't work out in your favor. But they admire and they endorse and they connect, they believe, and they immediately trust what they observe as patterns of integrity. So if you have it, bring it on. I had challenges with that, not because I don't have integrity, but I'm surrounded in my business by peers who have failed to demonstrate that in the past. So just because a few guys who wore white suits and gave our business a bad name, I have to now work twice as hard to demonstrate my integrity to my clients in order to be rich in that category. Rich in lifestyle. This works for me all the time. And it was pure accident. It's pure accident. But if you go back, and if you're a sort of a psychology geek, like I am, and you re-examine how the rich got rich in the first place, you sort of view this triangle called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Has anyone seen that before? It's like a delta, thank you. At the very bottom rung are the basic needs of food, shelter, your basic stuff, right? Safety, security, home, family. And then you build up to the middle. Now you're ambitious, you're in wealth acquisition, wealth accumulation, competitive drive, ambition, success, all that determines the center half of the pyramid. And then boom, you explode to the top. Now you're atrociously wealthy and successful. And you're at the very, very top, and suddenly other aspects come into play: self-actualization, self-esteem, broadening your horizon, religion, morality, integrity, all kinds of abstract aspects come at the very, very top, including saying enough is enough about work, I want to make a work-life balance, spend more time with my family, but not just more time, more enriched time with my family. Hence comes lifestyle and leisure. I am a Wall Street banker. I can't even start to tell you how many wine cellar consultations I've been to. My daughter's classmates' father and mother, parents, were building a gorgeous home in Key Biscayne. No, take that back. Key Largo in the Florida Keys. Right on the water, intercoastal and the Atlantic Ocean in 2 layers. Beautiful large home, and they wanted to have a wine cellar. The irony is, neither of them drink at all. Iced tea is all they drink. So they had this real high-priced architect came in and built them a cellar. Then they saw mine in Short Hills, New Jersey. They were just zapped. They put me on their private jet with my daughter, my wife, their daughter and his wife, flew me to their home. And my wife is as nervous as hell. She's Catholic and she's an engineer, so it's a double whammy. She says, oh my God, my husband is going to implode. Why did we get into this rut? So we land, we go to the home. I look at the wine cellar, I do a big gasp, and the architect is right there. And I say, this is horrible. You have the most magnificent vistas at the intercoastal and the Pacific and the Atlantic, and you have a wall, and you can't see that? Even Trump wouldn't have built a wall there, for God's sake. And my wife is clinching me and kicking me under the, whatever, the spousal kick, says, shut up, and within 48 hours, the entire cellar was reconfigured, a tasting room was established, an olivarium for single distilled olive oils was placed. Since he's into prosciuttos, we did a prosciutto corridor to do the tasting right after the wine cellar. The man is happy as a glove, and yet he doesn't drink a drop. Has got nothing to do with banking. But in those 30 minutes, I believe, in my triumph, I connected with that ultra-wealthy person. I appeared rich and credible and connectable. So these are some of my rare successes, most of them tribulations and struggles, but lifestyle. So if you have a lifestyle component that you want to celebrate, if you're a travel expert, if you are a safariista and you've done African safaris, bring that to the table because the wealthy will listen. If you are a hobbyist in some esoteric hobby, kite flying in Nicaragua, bring that up because you'll find an instant attention. And it's a remarkable way of breaking the ice because you're not just talking about boats or yachts, and that's the core of your product environment and your ecosystem, but it's the luxury and the lifestyle. Enough said. Oh, God. And you think the parents are like that? Meet their children. Has anyone heard this annoying word millennial? How many times a day do you hear that? I have 2 in my home, Alexandra and Julian. Now, I would call them brats, but I'll be struck by lightning because they're actually decent kids. But they could have easily gone the brat path very, very easily. The rich unconsciously feel entitled and empowered. They just do. You had to think about this too. I mean, if you amassed a fortune of 300 million plus, 400, a billion, whatever the number is, there's bound to be some circuits that went off inside that shut off your humility, adrenaline from flowing, right? It's just a chemical formula, right? It has to. And they really do feel empowered. So my sense is, hey, you know what? If you're moral scruples, if you're awkward to stroke egos, then you're in the wrong business. I really do that. I am in the wrong business. I am shamelessly stroke and feed the empowerment. Shamelessly. Occasionally, my wife accompanies me to these chairman's club events for our top-notch advisors at the firm. And then I go because I'm a geek. I'm speaking at those conferences to exotic places. And we were, in fact, in Cartagena, Colombia, just a week ago. And she would shudder and die at this really, syrupy man who's a husband who's stroking their egos of the clients that I meet in this. But it's just, unfortunately or fortunately, the part of the job. And if you have scruples, then you have to rebuild it. But here it is. Here it is. Flattery, you've heard this term, flattery always works, never lets you down, right? You've heard that term before. It's wrong. It's wrong. I say that unconditionally. I've tried it. It's really gotten me into trouble, right? I've been bailed out once or twice. Flattery with credibility, oh God, that is frightening. I call it source credibility. In other words, if you're a flatterer, earn the privilege to flatter. Are you getting this? Maybe I'm not saying it right. In other words, you have to be remarkably credible for the flatteree to feel that this person has the privilege to flatter. In other words, if you are a Greek god, right, and call another person who's somewhat good-looking, wow, you look good, that much more impact for that person versus if you are not. I'm giving you a very simplistic, terrible example. But in other words, if you are a knowledgeable person and you give another knowledgeable person a pat in the back for her or his academic achievement, or essentially, that is that much more credible. A professor complimenting a graduate student is that much more credible than a brother-in-law complimenting you for your academic achievement. Got the examples? Okay, I struggled with this one, but I think you got it. Source credibility prior to flattery. So if you establish a credibility based on your expertise of your business or lifestyle and other expertise, in my case it's wine and travel and photography, whatever the case may be, then you have now the ticket to flatter. And yes, then they will respond and they will succumb. However, don't overdo it. They'll see it. Because the rich get constantly flattered. They get constantly. You go to Madison Avenue today, on 34th and Madison, there is a shaving shop. All they do is shave, not even haircuts. It's $450 a shave. You get to, you bring in your dog if you have to. Your Bentleys are valet parked for you. The dog gets taken and pampered. If you have a kid, the kid gets pampered. You get served Chardonnay or champagne, and you get waxed poetic by this shaver who does the shaving and tells you told stories, and that's it. And that's the type of pampering that our wealthy do. So everywhere they go, they get pampered. But if they get pampered with source credibility, that much more powerful. The rich come with an ecosystem, and I discovered this. The rich are not by themselves. It used to be about 15 years ago, even in my business, when the client came to my office, she or he came alone. It was either the matriarch or the patriarch. And we did face-to-face business. We talked, we showed, we demonstrated, we analyzed. They signed the dotted line, and that was it. That was the nature of opening a new account 15 years ago. Today, my wealthy clients come in entourage. There's an entourage that comes with them. Their CPA is with them, their tax attorney is with them, the wealth planner is with them. Occasionally, a family skier is with them, maybe the son or the grandson. And a philanthropist or a donor consultant is with them. I have 4 or 5 suits that show up in my office for a finals meeting. So they come with their ecosystem. So my sense is, what's the big point in schmoozing just the patriarch? A mistake that I used to do constantly is to make eye contact only with the male, assuming like an idiot that he made all the decisions and investment decisions of the family, when in fact the matriarch had remarkable power in the decision-making process, and I learned that from experience. But it's not just the husband and wife anymore. It's the accountant, it's the CPA, it's the attorney. In fact, you have to preheat them, and that's what I learned. Preheat them even before the meeting. So in other words, you've already made the connection between with the CPA, with the attorney, because you have a common client, and whatever the client is going to decide on that day in the finals has been somewhat persuaded even before the meeting has occurred. Because if you'll notice, I'm not sure how a yachting brokerage close actually occurs. I'm thinking it can't be that different from my close. You'll see a lot of whispering by the ecosystem into the patriarch or the matriarch's ears. And it's really annoying, and it's because you're in the room, and they're going, and then the patriarch says, smiles, whatever, and you get really nervous as to what he just said. And then you adjust your tie, thinking, geez, maybe it's something that you're, whatever. Yeah. But if you've already done the preheating, none of those whisperings go on. In fact, the whisperings are in your favor because they've already built up the momentum towards you. So the takeaway from this is gatekeepers and centers of influence are as important, at least in my business, and I'm thinking in yours, even with the actual final decision maker. So there are lawyers in this room, if there are accountants in this room that cater to your business, if there are insurance and and banking advisors in this room, they are your centers of influence. They are your gatekeepers. And their word is as powerful as yours in trying to make the ecosystem happen. But let's bring the ecosystem right down to the family and children. We'll go back to the flattery part. Even more powerful, the ego stroking, not to the patriarch himself, but to his spouse. Even more so to his next G, his children. You genuinely connect with the kids of the wealthy. You are so ahead of the game in trying to make that sale happen or to make that relationship consummated. It's happened to me many times, to the point where I instituted in my business on Wall Street, and several of my competitors do this after I did, is I invite college-going adult children of my clients, and now recently my prospects, to a 1.5-day boot camp at Wharton and University of Chicago Business School, and those are my California clients, Stanford. And a day and a half, it's a very determined agenda, and the whole premise is we tell the parents that we want to orient their children about their family wealth at an early stage in their life, to actually see the accountabilities and the processes that me and my team are providing to the parents so that they learn from it and actually contribute to that. Now, of course, we cheat. We throw in all kinds of fun things in the evening. I mean, parties and this, of course, with guardrails, because these are brats, right, the millennials. But guess what happens? A magical thing happens when I finish doing with that. What do? They go back home and brag. And you think the patriarch and the matriarch does not have oodles and oodles of goodwill towards me and my firm for doing that? Please, acknowledge me for that. Yeah? That's the best practice. You can do it your own way, even if it's not a boot camp. Ask them to come and shadow you for a day, half a day. The single biggest concern I see with very wealthy parents today is not so much about their finances or not so much about the economy, not so much about Brexit, not so much about the asset securities. All of those are concerns, yes, but the single biggest concern is what we call the Paris Hilton syndrome. They are so afraid of their children not taking on the legacy of the parents. Have you encountered that in any of your interactions? So how intuitive it is to grab that child genuinely, not as a tactic, because that would be slick and that would be terrible and it'll backfire, but genuinely assemble a few kids. Maybe it's something to do around your business. Maybe it's even a field tour of an exotic yacht. So you establish that sense of awareness for these kids at a very young age so that they become your clients. That's the whole idea. In our business, we have a 78% attrition rate between the parents and the children. In other words, the children of our clients don't become our clients to the extent of 78% because we have not cultivated the children. They go elsewhere. So we catch them early and we cultivate the children and the spouse. Because that all comes back. So the combination of spouse, children, accountant, attorney, gatekeepers, now you have a whole team. Visualize a bunch of cheerleaders with pom-poms in your side, getting that rev up to get that sale done. As if you didn't know this. As if you didn't know this. Despite the halo that I've created around the wealthy. Despite, in the last 20 minutes, creating a sense of inaccessibility to the wealthy because I live with them, I breathe with them, I deal with them. I'm so intimately an observer of their psyche. I understand every breath they take and every movement they make, because think about it, I'm the second most important person, value provider to that family, after the doctor, after the family physician. Health comes first, wealth comes very, very, very close. Right? So in terms of trusted advisor status, I'm probably 1B, not even 2. So I get to see them intimately. And boy, are they imperfect. They are as vulnerable, they're as guilty, they're as awkward, they're as socially inept, they're as rowdy, they're as all of that. So there's a remarkable reveal under the kimono, if you will, of the human side that is so nice to know and so nice to understand. That does not mean that you have to manipulate their weaknesses, but you just have to be firm because they will manipulate you. It's the first temptation. Remember, they didn't get wealthy by being nice. Yeah? Just picture this. They did not. They manipulated, they maneuvered, they negotiated, they crushed, they whacked, they did everything possible. Then they felt guilty on their way home. Then they did novenas and went to church with their wives. But be firm. They respect firm. But there's, again, a thin line between being firm and stern. I mean firm like a librarian. Nice. But firm like a acrid, obnoxious, angry person, not nice. Be firm like a math teacher, nice. Right? See, you're getting the parallels of what firm is. Be firm, because they will manipulate you. Last and final. Classic marketing slogan. When you argue with your client, you may win the battle, but you'll lose or you may win the argument, but you'll lose the sale. You'll win the argument, but you lose the sale. You may win the golf putt with your client, but you lose the sale. Let them win. It's okay. Don't confront them. Hold it back. If there's a rising adrenaline to chop your client's head off, relax and sustain it. Go to the men's room and let the steam off, right? Come back refreshed, recharged with a halo, and do business again. Because you'll never regain all of the lost momentum that you've had with that prospect leading to client if you made that one little emotional mispass of having to argue. Even if you know it's obvious that this person's wrong, and yet being dogged about it. Be clear, show them the possibilities, tell them where there might be a possibility of error, be cordial, and move on. So let me summarize, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, it's terrible to stand here and be preachy about the virtues of doing business with anybody living or the wealthy. So apology one. If I came across as being preachy, that was unintended. Mine was merely a life narrative of the successes I've had and the failures and the challenges that I've had and I had to overcome. 2, the assumption on my part was that maybe 1 or 2 or 3 nuggets seeped in and made themselves relevant to you. For that, let me see a show of hands if there was 1, 2, or 3 nuggets that came out of mine. Oh, you're awfully polite. That's because you're in Florida. In New York, I said, please, not a chance. Right. Thank you, though. Thank you. And the third is I was opinionated, but then my opinionatedness is a reflection again, because I put myself in each of those anecdotes I gave you. I put myself in those situations, and I was beginning to see the face of the client, and I was relating to exactly what was going on. And that's hence, you're seeing a sort of a raw translation of the experiences I had. Let me stop there. Let me take a few questions if I have time. Maybe 2 or 3. Would that be okay, Cindy? Yes. Outstanding. Any questions for me? Any questions for me? Yes, sir.
What's the easiest way to overcome objections and conflicts?
Okay. I can hear it, but maybe I wouldn't if it's there. The question is, how do you overcome objections and hesitations, right? First, again, classic challenges that we face in our business are objections, and usually the objections are fee-based. Why is your fee that high or whatever? We do what we call a frequently asked FAQ, meaning what are the possible objections, possible constraints that you're going to counter in a typical conversation and engagement. Write down the answers, poll your colleagues in the office to get their answers so you'll have a credible team answer, or call an expert or a role model in your business and ask her or him how they countered or encountered this particular constraint or challenge. Document that. Once you've documented, my advice is to rehearse. I know, that sounds very contrived and sounds corny. Guess who's the master of rehearsal? Anyone here? Ronald Reagan. Master of rehearsal. Was he a good public speaker? Was he a good negotiator? Outstanding. Second best, or maybe even as good as Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. I mean, this is besides your political affiliations. These were remarkable rehearsers of possible objections. I'm meeting with the French foreign minister. What are the possibilities that she or he might bring up? Ask the Foreign Office, ask the Treasury Secretary, ask the Secretary of Commerce, ask the Secretary of State. Get the answers. Clinton will rehearse it on the East Pavilion, back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. And then almost waiting for that question to come, because he's waiting with that slugger for that ball to show up. And he's going to whack it with such intensity, and yet will have that sort of that smile and that little empathetic move to it. And that's what made Clinton Clinton. So a long answer to your question. Anticipate the FAQs. Yes, sir. What is the preferred method of communication? Very interestingly, I think they have followed their children's path. Most of these clients are texting me these days. I've never heard of that. I mean, I thought email was possibly. They don't phone call anymore. They don't want to be in an intimate phone conversation, although some of the more old-fashioned practitioners in my office typically still call, still connect on the phone. Face-to-face is the best, but they're impossible to get them on the schedule. So texting works for them as a communication predominantly, yes.
I'd like to ask your view related to your clients and how they think of the new shared economy model. We see it in a lot of different things. People in this room may not know what the shared economy is, but everybody knows what Uber, NetJets, Airbnb is. These are all companies that are in the shared economy model. There's movement in the yachting business to match that shared model, not fractional like we've all seen fail miserably over the years, but there is movement for a true equity-based membership yachting scenario. And my question to you would be, as the ultra-rich, not necessarily the matriarch or patriarch generation, the next generation that wants to use it, not necessarily own it. They don't want to beat their chest and say, that's my yacht at the end of the dock. But what have you encountered with your clients in terms of being receptive to this type of product? Do you recommend that your clients perhaps buy NetJet memberships or Jet Smarter or Exclusive Resorts or Inspirato related to their high-end luxury travel desires? There was an article in the New York Times in February that was very good and spoke to all these items. Everybody's sharing everything from luxury dresses to watches to cars. You can rent them for a day, a week, or a minute. So I'd just like some insight from you as to what your client base is doing in that regard.
Yes, I'll start with my own example, and thank you, by the way, both for the question and your gracious attempt to answer them yourself. No, I mean that sincerely. My own experience, in my own experience, sir, my child Julian is, if he could be the poster boy for old world communism, that would be the person, my son Julian, because he's anti-daddy's world of luxuries and indulgences and all of that good stuff. So he would never own a set of fountain pens that I do, because that's my passion, one of my collectible passions. He would never own a tie from Brooks Brothers or Hermes. It's just not, it's in his moral compass, that is not something he would do. He has the access to it. His mom and dad will only want to do that for him, but he wouldn't. However, interesting observation, he borrows the living daylights out of my wardrobe. He comes and pillages it like a pirate. He wears my ties, he wears my shoes, he wears my this, so he has no shame in taking on the coat of luxury, but wouldn't perhaps want to buy them or own them, which you can translate to some extent to jets and yachts. Our children like the experiences. They don't necessarily like the pride of ownership that our generation, which is our owners, are. And by the way, that's a speculative answer. I haven't done any research on it, but that's my speculative answer, in that the millennials in the next generation like the experiences, so the net jets will work for them. A yacht charter would work for them, versus daddy and mommy actually owning the yacht. They would love to go on vacations to their mom and dad's vacation homes, but may not want to buy one themselves. They can't maybe justify it. That's the observation I'm making so far, but that could change. They're still young. There was another question, and quickly, and I don't want to, yes, Hog, yes.
Yeah, Ash, I have two questions. The first one is, as yacht brokers, often our sales cycle can be quite long, sometimes a year or 2 years. So my question to that is, what is your advice on staying relevant to the client over such a lengthy period as you cultivate a relationship and hopefully get to the position of buying or working with you?
Okay, just to repeat that again, I missed a few words. Very clear.
Yeah.
You said, how do you sustain a relationship that you're building with a prospect to?
Right. You know, it might take a year of contact with a client over time.
Correct.
Before they're in a position to
Correct.
buy something. How do you stay relevant without becoming a nuisance?
Got it. And by the way, you're hitting on something that I'm particularly bad at. For some reason, there's an instant gratification meter that's clicking as fast. So I tend to prematurely take a friendship that's genuine and monetize that friendship into a mercantile relationship. My bad. But what I've noticed is, even if I extend that to 2 or 3 engagements purely on friendship, the friend brings up the possibility of the mercantile connection. And it's magic. It's just that I don't have the patience to wait for the second and third. So I guess my best practice there is, if you are patient, it's okay to take the 6 months to a year. And one way of doing that is just to drip. Not drip to annoy, but maybe every 2 months, send them a piece, an editorial, some content that's keeping this conversation alive on your purpose. Or it might be that on the first conversation, you heard about the child with a daughter applying for Cornell, and then you're a Cornell alumnus, and you're making some sort of a networking connection with the board in order to facilitate that, and that's part of your drip. If they genuinely see that you're overturing, it'll come, it's almost biblical. It comes 10 times back. It really does. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your support and thank you for your enthusiasm. Best of luck to you.